They tied her to a tree and left her for dead. Out in the middle of the burning desert, with no one around for miles, a woman takes her last breath, until the roar of a motorcycle cuts through the silence. The man who finds her isn't a cop. He's not a hero. He's a Hell's Angel, covered in scars, tattoos, and a past no one dares to speak about. But instead of riding away, he saves her life. What happens next shatters everything she thought she knew about good and evil, because the man who rescued her is being hunted by the same monsters who tried to kill her. And when their worlds collide, it's not just their lives on the line, it's their souls. Can a woman of faith trust the outlaw who carries her to safety? And can a man branded by sin ever be forgiven before it's too late? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The Arizona sun hung low over the red desert hills, baking everything it touched. Dust swirled behind Ellie Monroe's old blue pickup as she rattled down the dirt road toward home. The steering wheel shook in her hands, but she didn't mind. She'd spent the morning at the county office, giving her report about the ranchers who had been starving their horses. It wasn't something she liked doing, but when she saw cruelty, she couldn't stay silent. Her heart still pounded from the meeting. The sheriff had said they'd look into it, the same thing he said every time. Ellie hoped this time they truly would. The image of those thin horses, their ribs showing through their hides, wouldn't leave her mind. She pressed harder on the gas, eager to get back to her small house and feed her rescues waiting by the barn. The road wound between canyons of orange stone. A vulture circled overhead, a dark shape against the blazing sky. Ellie hummed a hymn under her breath to calm her nerves, something her mother used to sing when fear crept in. Then she saw it, a black SUV blocking the road ahead. Her heart skipped. She slowed the truck, tires crunching on gravel. The driver's door opened, and 3 men stepped out. Their faces were hidden under dusty caps and dark sunglasses. One of them, tall and broad, held a smirk that made Ellie's stomach twist. "Afternoon, ma'am," the man said, voice too polite to be real. "We heard you've been spreading lies about good folks." Ellie's mouth went dry. "I only told the truth," she said quietly. "Those animals were starving." The man laughed, low and mean. "See, that's the problem. Some things don't need telling." Before Ellie could back away, the second man yanked open her door. Rough hands grabbed her, dragging her out of the truck. Her hat fell off, hair catching the wind. "Please," she cried, struggling. "I didn't." A slap cut her words short. The third man pulled a coil of rope from the SUV and tossed it to the leader. "We'll teach her to mind her own business," he said. They dragged her into the desert brush, her boots scraping the dry ground. The air smelled of dust and fear. Ellie's thoughts spun. She prayed silently, whispering under her breath, "Lord, please help me. Please." They stopped at a mesquite tree, its twisted branches clawing at the sky. The men tied her wrists to the trunk, the rope biting into her skin. One man leaned close, his breath sour. "Maybe next time you'll keep quiet." Then they left, just like that. The SUV roared away, kicking up a trail of dust until it disappeared over the ridge. Ellie tried to loosen the ropes, but they were too tight. Her arms throbbed. The sun began to fall, turning the desert gold, then red, then gray. She screamed for help until her voice cracked, but there was no one to hear. The desert grew cold fast. Shadows stretched long across the ground. Coyotes howled somewhere far off. Ellie's body trembled, her lips dry and cracked. She closed her eyes and thought of her son, gone so many years now, and her husband, whose gentle laugh once filled their small home. Tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered again, "Lord, Don't let it end like this. The night deepened. Crickets sang. Her heartbeat slowed until even her thoughts began to fade. Then, a sound. A low rumble in the distance. At first she thought it was thunder, but it grew louder, closer. It wasn't thunder, it was a motorcycle. A single headlight cut through the dark, weaving along the dirt road. The engine growled like some wild beast, then stopped near the tree. A man dismounted, a tall, broad figure in leather and denim. His beard was rough, his arms covered in tattoos. The moonlight caught the glint of a silver chain around his neck, hanging beside a small cross. He froze when he saw her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, one bound and broken, the other hard and unreadable. Then he cursed under his breath, pulled a knife from his belt, and cut her loose. Ellie's knees buckled. He caught her before she fell, his calloused hands surprisingly gentle. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Ellie could barely nod. They left me. I can see that." He glanced down the road, eyes narrowing. "Who did this?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Please, I just want to go home." The man hesitated. "Ain't safe out here. You'll freeze before morning." He draped his leather jacket over her shoulders. "I got a place nearby." Ellie wanted to argue, to run, but her body was weak, and her mind was fading. She could feel herself slipping toward sleep. The man lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carried her to his bike, and set her gently behind him. "Hang on," he said. As the engine roared to life, the wind rushed past her face. The desert blurred into darkness. Somewhere deep inside, Ellie's fear mixed with something else. Relief. She didn't know who this man was, or what kind of life he'd lived. But for now, he was her only chance. When the motorcycle slowed again, they reached a small cabin tucked between the rocks. The man carried her inside, laid her on a worn couch, and poured water from a jug into a tin cup. "Drink," he said softly. Ellie's hands trembled as she took it. The water tasted like hope. The man sat across from her, the light of a single lamp flickering over his face. Scars crossed his knuckles. His eyes looked tired, haunted. "Name's Diesel," he said finally. "You're safe here tonight." Ellie clutched the cup to her chest. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you help me?" Diesel looked away. "Guess I know what it's like to be left for dead." Outside, the wind howled through the canyons. Inside, two broken souls sat in silence, bound by something neither could yet name. Night wrapped around the little cabin like a heavy blanket. The wind slid under the door and rattled the windows. Diesel moved quiet and careful. He brought a clean towel, a small bottle of antiseptic, and a metal first aid box that had seen better days. Ellie sat propped up on the couch, dizzy and sore. Her wrists throbbed where the rope had rubbed her skin raw. "This will sting," Diesel said. His voice was deep but gentle. He poured a bit of liquid on the towel and dabbed her wrists. Ellie sucked in a breath. He steadied her hand with his palm, wide and warm. "Sorry." "It's all right," she whispered. Her throat felt dry, but the water he gave her helped. The jacket he had wrapped around her smelled like cold air and motor oil. It should have scared her, but somehow it made her feel safe. Diesel taped gauze around each wrist, working with slow care, like a man who was used to fixing things. When he finished, he sat back on a wooden chair across from her. A small lamp on the table spread a soft circle of light between them. The rest of the room stayed in shadow. "Hungry?" he asked. Ellie nodded, surprised at the need that flared in her stomach. He opened a cupboard and took out a can of chicken soup and a dented pot. Soon, the smell of warm broth filled the room. He poured the soup into a big mug and handed it to her with both hands, as if it were something precious. "Thank you," she said. Her voice shook, but the soup steadied her. Diesel watched her take small sips. He didn't pry. He didn't stare. He just sat there, making sure she ate. In the quiet, Ellie noticed things. A Bible lay on the corner of the table, edges worn. A photo was tucked in the frame of a mirror, so faded she could barely make it out. A woman with a bright smile held a boy with a crooked cap. Diesel's eyes drifted toward that photo once, then away, as if it burned to look too long. A log popped in the small wood stove. The room warmed. Ellie set the empty mug on the table and folded her bandaged hands in her lap. "They said I shouldn't talk," she said, her words slow. "About the horses, but I couldn't keep quiet." She met his eyes. "I saw them starving." Diesel's jaw worked. "You did the right thing." "Doing the right thing hurt," she said with a tired smile that didn't last. She looked at her wrists. "They left me there like I was nothing." "You're not nothing," he said, so sure it startled her. He stood, rolled a blanket from the arm of the couch, and shook it out. "You should sleep. We'll head to your place at first light." The idea made her stomach flutter. "You'll take me home?" He nodded. "Your truck's not out there. They must have torched it or moved it. You shouldn't be alone tonight." He set the blanket over her like a careful big brother. Then he crossed the room and turned off the lamp, leaving only the small glow from the stove. Ellie closed her eyes. She didn't sleep much, but she rested. When she woke in the night, she saw Diesel sitting by the window, a shadow with broad shoulders, watching the dark. He kept that quiet watch until the room turned gray with dawn. By morning, the wind calmed. The sky took on a pale pink around the edges. Diesel cooked eggs in a cast-iron pan and set a plate in her lap with toast. The simple food tasted like strength. "Thank you," Ellie said again. She meant it more each time. "Eat," he said. "Then we ride." She stood slowly, testing her legs. The soreness settled into her muscles, but she could move. Diesel handed her a knit cap and a pair of old gloves, too big but warm. Outside, the air was sharp and clean, and the land spread wide with low brush and red rock. His motorcycle sat waiting, chrome dull under the thin light. He offered her a spare helmet and helped her buckle it under her chin. "Hold on to me," he said. "Lean when I lean. We'll take it slow." Ellie climbed onto the seat behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, careful of her wrists. The bike started with a growl that echoed off the rocks. They rolled forward, smooth and steady. Cold air rushed against her cheeks, and the wind tried to tug her away, but her grip held. She could feel Diesel's breathing, the rhythm calm and certain, and that steadiness gave her courage. They followed a dirt path out of the rocks and onto a wider road. The sun climbed. The world brightened. Ellie pointed when she recognized a turn, and Diesel steered that way without question. They rode past low scrub, wind-bent mesquite, and a roadside cross someone had planted long ago. A hawk traced a slow circle in the clear sky. As they neared her place, Ellie's body tightened. She tapped Diesel's shoulder, and he eased the bike to a stop at the end of her gravel drive. Her small farmhouse sat ahead, white paint peeling in places, a narrow porch running along the front. Her barn stood to the side, fence lines running like old stitches across the land. At first, everything looked normal. Then she saw it. Black spray paint slashed across her porch rail. Snitch. The word bled down the wood in ugly drips. Ellie's breath caught. Diesel shut off the engine. The sudden quiet roared in her ears. She slid off the bike and stepped forward slowly, as if the word might jump if she moved too fast. "I'm sorry," Diesel said behind her. "It's my home," she said, voice small but steady. She moved to the porch and reached out as if to wipe the paint away with her coat sleeve. Diesel caught her hand. "Don't," he said softly. "You'll get it all over you. I'll handle it." He set the kickstand, pulled a rag and a small bottle from his saddlebag, squinted at the label, and nodded. "It's not much, but it'll cut the gloss." He got to work, rubbing in tight circles, lifting some of the shine so the word looked less loud. It wouldn't come off completely, but it faded. He took a step back, breathing a little hard. "We'll paint over it later." Ellie swallowed. The word still hurt to see, but his effort dulled its sting. "Thank you," she said, and meant it for more than the rag. They walked the fence line next. Diesel ran his fingers along a broken slat near the east corner. "They kicked it in," he said. "See the fresh splinters?" "I see." Ellie glanced toward the small paddock where she kept 2 rescue mares. Both lifted their heads, ears twitching. "Hey, girls," she called, voice softening. She opened the gate and checked their water. "I'll bring grain in a minute." Diesel studied the yard with a mechanic's eye. Tracks in the dirt, a footprint near the porch steps, an empty beer can half buried by the mesquite. He picked it up and tossed it into the trash. His jaw set. "They came here after they left you. Wanted to scare you worse." "It worked," she said. She didn't pretend otherwise. "Fear's normal," he said. "Staying scared is a choice." He met her eyes. "You chose right last night. You stayed alive." Ellie let out a shaky breath. "I'd like to go inside now. Let me check it first." He climbed the steps, tried the knob, and pushed the door open slowly. He scanned the small living room. The couch with a quilt folded over the back, a bookshelf with old paperbacks, a few framed photos that were still standing. "Looks clear," he said, and stepped aside. Ellie entered and stood still. The house smelled like dust and sage. Her eyes moved to the photo on the mantel. Her son with his shy smile, her husband with his arm around both of them. She touched the frame with her fingertips and whispered something Diesel couldn't hear. He gave her time. When she turned back, she looked a little taller. "I need to call the sheriff," she said. "I'll stay while you do." She nodded and picked up the phone. After a slow ring and a pause, she explained what happened. The road, the tree, the word on the porch. She spoke clear and calm. When she hung up, she said, "They'll send a deputy this afternoon." "Good." Diesel looked out the front window toward the road. "I'll fix your gate before they come." Would you like coffee?" Ellie asked. The offer surprised her, but it felt right. He hesitated as if unsure he should accept. Then he said, "Yes, ma'am." The words came out soft. While the coffee brewed, Ellie poured grain into 2 small pails and stepped back outside. Diesel was already at the fence with a hammer he'd found in her shed, tapping a board into place. The steady sound felt like a promise. Ellie carried the pails to the mares. They nickered and pushed their noses into her hands. She laughed, the sound thin but real. When she returned to the porch with 2 steaming mugs, Diesel had set the hammer aside. He took a mug and warmed his hands on it. "Why did you help me?" Ellie asked. She had wondered all night. Diesel stared at the horizon a long moment. "There was a time someone could have helped my family," he said. "No one did. I ain't passing that kind of hurt forward." A motorcycle rumbled far off on the highway. Diesel's eyes flicked that way, and his body went still for a beat, like a wolf catching a scent. Then he relaxed again. "You're not safe alone," he said. "I can stay outside today. Work the fence. Be around when the deputy shows." "That would help," Ellie said. She looked at the half-faded word on the rail. "I don't want to be afraid in my own house." "You don't have to be." He set his empty mug on the porch. "We'll paint that rail later. I'll bring some from town." "We?" "You and me," he said, as if it were the simplest thing. Ellie held his gaze. Something steady passed between them. Nothing fancy, just two people who had seen pain and were still standing. "All right," she said. They spent the next hours side by side. Diesel mended the fence. Ellie cleaned up the porch, sweeping away broken bits of wood and glass. She checked the mares again and filled their water. Now and then they traded small words about nails, boards, and where to stack the scrap. The sun rose high. The air warmed. A pale blue calm slipped back over the land. Late morning slid into noon. The kettle whistled again. They shared sandwiches at the small kitchen table. Diesel's eyes moved once more to the family photo on the mantel, and Ellie followed his look. "My son's gone," she said softly. "He struggled with pills. I couldn't save him." Diesel's mouth pressed thin. "I'm sorry. Thank you." She cleared her throat. "What about you?" He stared down at his hands, the scars white against his skin. "I had a family once." He didn't say more, but the grief in his voice filled the spaces he left empty. Before either of them found a new word, tires crackled on gravel. A sheriff's cruiser rolled into the drive, dust trailing. Ellie stood, shoulders squaring. Diesel did not move toward the door right away. He took a hawat, slow breath, then rose too. "Ready?" he asked. Ellie looked at the faded word on the rail, then at the mended board on the fence. "Yes," she said. "I am." Together they stepped onto the porch to meet the law and whatever came next. The sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop, crunching gravel under its tires. Ellie stood on the porch with her hands clasped tight, her heart drumming faster than she liked. Diesel stayed beside her, still as stone. The morning sun glared off the cruiser's windshield until the door opened, and Sheriff Dana Caldwell stepped out, her tan hat pulled low against the light. "Morning, ma'am," she said, her tone polite but sharp. "Heard you had some trouble last night." Ellie nodded. "They tied me to a tree, Sheriff. Left me to die." Caldwell's eyes softened, just a little. "Let's go over it from the start." They sat around Ellie's small kitchen table. Diesel stayed standing by the window, arms crossed, his shadow filling the corner. The sheriff's notebook flipped open with a crisp sound. "Tell me what happened." Ellie went through it all. The SUV, the men, the rope, the cold. She told it steady, like reading a list she didn't want to remember. When she reached the part about Diesel finding her, Caldwell's eyes lifted. "You said a biker saved you?" Ellie nodded. "Yes, he brought me here. If not for him, I'd be gone." Caldwell turned to Diesel. "You part of a club, mister?" "Was," Diesel said. "A long time ago." "What club?" "Iron Vultures." He said it without flinching. Caldwell's brows arched. "That's a name I know." She jotted something down. "They're still running out of Tucson, nasty bunch." "Yeah," Diesel said. "Still are." "You got proof it was them?" she asked Ellie. "I didn't see faces," Ellie said softly. "They had hats and glasses, but they knew what I'd done, reporting that ranch for animal abuse." Caldwell closed her notebook. "I'll send someone to look into it, but I can't promise quick results. These things take time." Diesel's voice came low. Time she might not have. The sheriff studied him, measuring. "You planning to play bodyguard, Mr. Dalton?" Call it repayment, he said. Caldwell gave a slow nod. All right, but if you see anyone around, you call me first. Don't take matters into your own hands. Diesel's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. No promises. After the sheriff left, Ellie sank into a chair. Her hands trembled a little. Diesel poured her more coffee without asking. She took it, grateful. Do you think she'll help? Ellie asked. She'll try, Diesel said. But those men won't stop because of paper and badges. Her throat tightened. You think they'll come back? He nodded once. They always do. Ellie looked out the window where the sheriff's car had disappeared. Then I'll have to be ready. Diesel met her eyes, surprised. You planning to fight them? I'm planning to live, she said. That's what God wants me to do. That afternoon, they worked side by side again. Diesel fixed the barn door that hung crooked, while Ellie scrubbed soot off the kitchen walls from an old stove fire. It felt strange having another person around. Someone steady, someone quiet. He moved with purpose, never wasting emotion. When a nail bent, he pulled it out and tried again, patient and calm. Every once in a while, she caught him glancing at the photo on the mantel. Your family? She asked gently once. He hesitated, then nodded. My wife and son. Both gone. I'm sorry, Ellie said, meaning it deep. Me too. His voice rasped, like the words scraped his throat. When they paused for lunch, Ellie offered him a sandwich and lemonade on the porch. The desert spread out ahead, endless and bright. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the faint scent of hay. Why'd you leave the club? She asked after a while. Diesel stared at the horizon. Too many graves. I figured I'd end up in one if I stayed. Do they know where you are? They will, he said quietly. Word travels fast in circles like that. Ellie studied his face. Hard lines, sun-worn skin, eyes that had seen too much. You don't scare me, she said softly. A hint of a smile tugged at his mouth. Good. Most people don't say that. I've met worse things than tattoos and a loud motorcycle. Yeah? He asked. Fear, loneliness, she said. They're worse. He nodded, looking down. You ain't wrong. As the day stretched into evening, the ranch began to feel alive again. Diesel's presence changed the air, more guarded, but also more grounded. Ellie cooked a small supper, beans, cornbread, and the last of her canned peaches. Diesel ate with quiet gratitude. After they finished, he stood and stretched. You got a spare room? Ellie blinked. There's the old guest room, but it hasn't been used in years. I'll take the couch, he said. Easier to keep watch from there. You don't have to. Yeah, I do, he interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. When night fell, Ellie tried to read by lamplight but found her eyes too heavy. Diesel sat by the window again, a silent guard. The desert outside glowed silver under the moon. Around midnight, Diesel saw it first, a faint glimmer down the road. Headlights, slow, deliberate. He tensed, the old instincts flooding back. The light stopped a good distance away, engine idling, then turned and vanished into the dark. Diesel exhaled, but not in relief. Trouble was coming. He knew that kind of patience, the waiting kind, the kind that came before fire and pain. He checked the door locks, then stood over Ellie's sleeping form on the couch opposite him. Her face, even in sleep, held lines of courage. He whispered, You picked the wrong woman to scare, and went back to his watch. By dawn, the horizon glowed rose and gold. Diesel brewed coffee and stepped outside, scanning the road. No tracks, no tire marks, just wind and dust. Ellie joined him on the porch, still in her robe. Something wrong? Maybe nothing, he said. But I'm gonna check the ridge later. Make sure we're alone." She nodded. "Be careful." "I always am," he said, though both knew that wasn't true. He rode off after breakfast, the Harley's rumble fading into the desert's vast silence. Ellie stood watching until he disappeared over the rise, her heart full of questions she wasn't ready to ask. Inside the cabin, the coffee still steamed on the table. The sheriff's words echoed in her head. "Don't take matters into your own hands. But when you've been tied to a tree and left for dead, the line between fear and faith becomes thin as a whisper." And Ellie Monroe wasn't done fighting. The morning settled soft and clear over the ranch. The air still carried a bite from the night, but the light was warm, brushing gold across the fields. Diesel finished checking the fence he had fixed and came back toward the porch. Ellie stood there, her arms wrapped in a worn shawl, a cup of coffee in her hands. "You work like you've lived here all your life," she said with a small smile. He shrugged. "Can't sit still. Besides, these boards won't hold forever." Ellie looked over the field, her horses grazing beyond the fence line. "Nothing does," she murmured. They stood quiet a while. The calm almost felt normal. Too normal for what both of them had lived through. When Diesel turned toward the barn to grab tools, Ellie called after him, "I was thinking of going into town today. The storekeeper has paint. I want to cover that word on the porch before I have to keep seeing it." He nodded. "I'll ride with you." Ellie hesitated. "You don't have to guard me." Diesel leaned one shoulder against the porch rail. "Don't got anything better to do." That earned the faintest laugh from her, and the sound loosened something heavy in the air. By late morning, they loaded her old wagon with supplies, feed, nails, and a bucket of pale blue paint. Diesel's motorcycle rumbled behind her truck as they made their slow way into town. Main Street was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's name and business. When Ellie stepped out, heads turned. She felt the weight of eyes, whispering, curious and half disbelieving that she was still alive. Diesel parked across the street, helmet under his arm, and the whispers turned sharper. A Hell's Angel walking into Miller's Supply was news enough for a week. Inside, the bell above the door jingled. Old Mr. Miller blinked at Diesel's tattoos, then at Ellie. "Morning, Miss Monroe," he said carefully. "Heard you had a rough time?" Ellie gave a tight smile. "I did, but I'm here." She picked up the paint she needed and a new brush. Diesel added a box of nails and gloves, paying cash without a word. Miller's eyes followed him warily the whole time, but when Diesel carried the heavy supplies out for Ellie, the old man said softly, "Good luck to you both." Outside, Ellie caught Diesel's eye. "He's a good man, just set in his ways." "Most folks are," Diesel said, loading the paint into the truck bed. "Takes something big to change them." On the way home, the ride was quiet but not tense. The road stretched long between cliffs and wide plains. Ellie drove, the wind from the open window tugging at her hair. "You said you used to be one of them," she said finally. "The Iron Vultures?" "Yeah. What made you stop?" He took a breath that came out rough. "My wife and son. They got caught up in it. Too many bad choices. Too many nights I thought I was in control when I wasn't." He looked at the road ahead, jaw tight. "Then one day they were gone. I walked away from the club and never looked back." Ellie's hands tightened on the wheel. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but his eyes gave him away. Pain that ran too deep for words. "Guess we both know something about losing folks." When they reached the ranch, the afternoon light had turned softer, streaking the sky with gold. Diesel unloaded the paint and mixed it while Ellie brought out brushes. Together they covered the hateful word on the porch rail. The pale blue paint spread smooth, washing the ugliness away stroke by stroke. When they finished, Ellie stepped back. "That's better," she said. Diesel nodded. "Looks like peace again." She smiled faintly. "You talk like you've been searching for that a long time." He didn't deny it. They spent the rest of the afternoon tending the horses and stacking supplies. Diesel repaired a broken hinge on the barn door, while Ellie swept the porch clean. The rhythm of their work felt steady, ordinary. For two people used to pain, ordinary was its own kind of blessing. As the sun sank lower, Diesel carried the tools back to the shed. Ellie followed, a soft breeze lifting the hem of her dress. "You can stay in the guest room tonight," she said quietly. "It's better than sleeping on that old couch." He paused. "You sure?" "I am. You saved my life, Mr. Dalton. The least I can do is give you a bed." Diesel gave a small nod. "All right, but I'll still keep my gun close." "I wouldn't expect otherwise," she said, smiling a little. That night, dinner was simple: fried potatoes, beans, and cornbread. The sound of the crickets drifted through the open window, filling the small kitchen. They ate in quiet comfort, interrupted only by the clinking of forks. Afterward, Ellie washed dishes while Diesel dried. She glanced at him, noticing the faint scar along his jaw, the way he handled everything carefully, as if afraid of breaking it. "You said you were done with the club," she said, "but they don't sound done with you." "They ain't," he admitted. "Men like Rex Murdoch, he don't forget someone walking away." "That's their leader?" "Yeah. Used to be my brother in all but blood. He don't forgive betrayal." Ellie frowned. "Helping me isn't betrayal." "In their eyes it is." The words hung heavy. She looked down at the soapy water, her reflection trembling on the surface. "Then we'll pray he stays away." Diesel didn't answer, but his eyes softened. "I hope prayer's enough." When the dishes were done, Ellie poured them each a cup of tea and led him to the porch. The stars had come out, bright, scattered, endless. They sat side by side on the steps, cups warming their hands. "You really believe God listens?" Diesel asked after a while. "Yes," Ellie said simply. "Even when we don't think he does. Especially then." He stared out at the horizon. "I used to think he quit on me a long time ago." "Maybe he didn't quit," she said softly. "Maybe he sent you to that tree." Diesel's throat worked. "I don't deserve saving." "None of us do," she said. "That's what makes grace grace." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was full of something tender, like peace slowly finding its way in. Before heading inside, Diesel paused at the doorway. "You ever think maybe you were meant to be found?" Ellie smiled faintly. "I think maybe we both were." Later, when the house was dark and the world quiet again, Diesel lay awake in the small guest room. Through the window, he saw the faint glow of the moon painting the desert silver. Somewhere out there, the iron vultures still rode. He could feel it in his bones. The storm hadn't passed yet. But for the first time in years, he whispered a small prayer anyway. Not for forgiveness, not for peace, just for one more day to keep her safe. The next morning broke with a pale golden light spilling through the curtains. Ellie stirred awake to the soft clatter of tools outside. When she looked through the window, Diesel was already in motion. Shirt sleeves rolled up, hammer swinging steady as a clock. He worked with quiet focus, every strike of the nail echoing across the still land. Ellie smiled faintly. She hadn't felt this sense of safety in a long time. She brewed coffee and carried 2 mugs outside. Diesel looked up when she approached, sweat glinting on his forehead. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep much, he replied, taking the mug. Old habits die hard. Ellie leaned against the porch railing. It's peaceful here, even with everything that happened. Diesel gave a dry chuckle. Peace don't always mean safe. She studied him. You sound like a man who's had to learn that the hard way. He didn't answer, just sipped his coffee, his gaze drifting to the horizon. They worked together through the morning, Ellie tending to the horses while Diesel repaired the sagging barn roof. By noon, the sun was high and hot, and Ellie brought out sandwiches wrapped in paper. They ate under the shade of the barn. Between bites, Ellie spoke quietly. You said last night the men who hurt me were tied to your old club. Yeah, Diesel said, lowering his sandwich. Same kind of filth. They deal with the ones who don't fall in line. Why do they want to hurt me? I just reported cruelty. Because you made them lose money, he said. People like that don't care about horses or laws. They care about control. Ellie frowned. And they think scaring me will fix that? Diesel's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Worked on plenty of folks before you, but you're tougher than most. Ellie blushed slightly. Tough isn't the word I'd use. Stubborn, maybe. He met her eyes, his voice low. Sometimes that's the same thing. They finished eating in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. That afternoon, Ellie pulled out a notebook and began sketching rough plans on the porch. Diesel joined her, curious. What's that? He asked. Grace Acres, she said softly. That's what I want to call this place. A sanctuary. For rescued horses, maybe people too. The lost ones, the ones the world gives up on. Diesel looked at her like she'd said something he didn't dare believe in. You really think a place like that can work? I have to, she said. If I don't believe, who will? He leaned back against the post, folding his arms. What made you start rescuing them? My son, she said after a pause. When he was little, he found a broken-winged bird and begged me to fix it. We did, together. But later, when he grew up and when I lost him, I couldn't fix that. So I fixed what I could. Diesel's face softened. That's something. Ellie gave a weak smile. What about you? What keeps you fixing things? He stared at his hands, rough and scarred. Maybe I'm hoping one day I'll fix something that matters. Before Ellie could respond, a sound cut through the still air. A truck engine, far off but coming closer. Diesel stiffened immediately. He moved toward the driveway, eyes narrowing. A battered pickup rolled up to the gate. It wasn't the sheriff. It was a local rancher, Frank Davis, known for minding everyone's business but his own. He climbed out, a sneer already on his face. Afternoon, Ellie, he said, his voice dripping with false cheer. Heard you got yourself a new guard dog. Diesel stood tall beside the fence. Something you need? Frank spat into the dirt. Just checking in. A lot of talk in town about you bringing a biker into your home. Folks say maybe you like trouble. Ellie's cheeks flushed. Mr. Davis, that man saved my life. Frank snorted. Maybe. Or maybe he's the reason you needed saving. Those types run in packs. Diesel didn't move, but his eyes went cold. You should leave. Just being neighborly, Frank said, smirking. You take care now, Ellie. You never know who you're inviting in. He climbed back into his truck and drove off, leaving a trail of dust and the echo of his words behind. Ellie turned toward Diesel, guilt clouding her face. I'm sorry. People around here... Don't bother me, Diesel said. I've been called worse by better. Still, Ellie saw the pain flicker in his eyes. She reached out, touching his arm. You're not what they think you are." He looked at her hand for a long moment, then met her eyes. "Maybe not. But I'm not what you think either." She didn't answer. The silence stretched between them until the sound of a whinny broke it. One of the mares kicked against the fence, nervous. Ellie hurried to calm her, murmuring softly until the animal settled. When she turned back, Diesel was gone from the yard, his motorcycle rumbling away down the dirt road. He didn't return until evening. Ellie found him sitting by the corral, staring out toward the mountains as the sun went down. "I thought you left," she said quietly. He shook his head. "Just needed air. Needed to think." "About what?" "About whether me staying here is going to bring more trouble on you." Ellie stepped closer. "You staying here is the only reason I can sleep at night. That's not trouble, that's mercy." Diesel looked at her, eyes dark with something like gratitude he didn't know how to show. "You got a strange way of seeing the world." "Maybe," she said, smiling faintly. "But it's kept me alive this long." The sky turned purple and soft. Crickets began their night song. Diesel stood, brushing the dust from his jeans. "Tomorrow I'll get lumber from town. Build a real gate that locks." Ellie nodded. "And I'll make you breakfast that isn't from a can." He chuckled, low and rough. "Deal." As they headed back toward the house, the faint hum of another engine echoed in the far distance. Too far to see, but close enough to make Diesel pause and glance back once more. The peace they'd built that day felt fragile now, like a single candle flickering against the dark. And somewhere beyond the ridge, a shadow of the past was moving closer. The following morning came bright and clear, with the kind of calm that made the world seem safe again, though Diesel knew better. He was up before the sun, fixing a cracked post near the paddock. The steady rhythm of hammer against wood echoed through the still air. Ellie stepped onto the porch, wrapped in her shawl, watching him for a moment before calling out. "You work like a man being chased," she said gently. Diesel looked up, his eyes shaded beneath his cap. "Work keeps ghosts quiet," he replied. Ellie smiled sadly. "Then maybe we both should keep busy." Inside, she prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and strong coffee. Diesel ate like a man who hadn't seen a real kitchen in years, quiet and polite. Between bites, Ellie asked, "You still planning to get lumber from town today?" "Yeah," he said. "I'll bring back enough for that new gate, and maybe a few boards for the barn roof." Ellie nodded. "While you're gone, I'll visit Reverend Burke. I promised I'd bring him some fresh eggs." She hesitated. "Maybe I'll tell him about you. I think he'd want to meet you." Diesel's brow furrowed. "Don't need a preacher worrying over me." Ellie shook her head. "He doesn't worry. He listens, that's all." When they parted ways that morning, Diesel rode his Harley toward town, the engine growling low and steady. Ellie watched him go, then gathered her basket and headed into town herself in her old pickup. Reverend Burke's small church sat at the edge of the main road, white paint peeling in spots, the cross on top slightly tilted by years of wind. When Ellie stepped inside, she found the Reverend sweeping near the altar. "Well now," he said, setting the broom aside with a grin. "If it isn't Miss Monroe, you've been scarce lately." "I've been healing," she said softly. "Had a bit of trouble." His smile faded. "I heard something about that. The Lord surely had his hand on you, Ellie." She nodded. "He sent help, someone I never expected." Reverend Burke tilted his head. "Help, you say?" "Yes. A man who used to be part of a biker gang. He found me when I was left out there." The Reverend's eyes softened with understanding. "And you let him stay?" I did. He's been fixing the place up, helping with the horses. But more than that, I think he's trying to find peace. The Reverend smiled gently. Funny thing about grace, it finds people in the strangest ways. Ellie laughed softly. I told him that. He doesn't believe it yet. Then maybe we'll have to show him. Ellie left the church with a lighter heart. The Reverend's words stayed with her as she drove home, humming a hymn under her breath. Meanwhile, Diesel parked his Harley outside the hardware store. He loaded lumber, nails, and a roll of fencing wire, nodding at a few curious faces who kept their distance. He was used to that, people looking but not speaking. As he secured the last board, he caught sight of a man across the street watching him closely. The man had greasy hair and wore a worn leather vest with faded wings stitched on the back. The sight froze Diesel's blood. Iron vultures. The man smirked when he saw recognition flash in Diesel's eyes, then turned and disappeared into a nearby alley. Diesel's hands clenched around the rope he was using to tie down the boards. He scanned the street. Nothing else seemed out of place. But his gut told him what his eyes couldn't see. They'd found him. He rode hard back to the ranch, every mile tightening his chest. When he pulled into the drive, Ellie was already home, unloading her basket from the truck. She smiled at first, until she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked, setting the basket down. "They know where I am," he said. "I saw one of them in town." Ellie's heart sank. "The men who—" "Yeah," Diesel said. "The same crew. Won't be long before the rest show up." She took a shaky breath. "What do we do?" Diesel looked at the house, the fields, the painted porch rail. "We prepare. I'll reinforce the doors tonight. Keep your phone near, and if I say go, you go." Ellie nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. "You really think they'll come?" He met her gaze. "They always finish what they start." That evening, Ellie cooked stew, but neither of them ate much. The unease hung thick in the air. Diesel sat by the window, cleaning his old revolver, while Ellie sat on the couch with her Bible open but unread. "I went to church today," she said after a while. "Told Reverend Burke about you." Diesel didn't look up. "That so?" He said grace finds people in strange ways. Diesel's mouth twitched in a half-smile. "He's not wrong about that." Ellie closed her Bible and studied him. "You don't have to face them alone, you know. Don't plan to involve you." "You already have," she said quietly. "You saved my life, Diesel. That makes it my fight, too." He looked up at her then, something fierce and soft in his eyes. "You got more courage than half the men I've known." "And you've got more goodness than you'll admit," she said. The corner of his mouth lifted. "Don't go spreading that rumor." Ellie laughed, a small sound that eased the tension just enough for them both to breathe again. After supper, Diesel stepped outside. The night was cold and still. He walked the fence line with a flashlight, scanning the horizon. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their cries fading into the vast dark. He stopped near the gate, the same one he planned to rebuild tomorrow, and stared out into the open desert. The stars glittered above him, bright and endless, but the quiet carried a weight that pressed on his chest. He whispered, "God, if you're listening, keep her safe. Take me instead, if you have to." It wasn't a prayer he'd planned to say. It just came out, raw and real. When he turned back toward the house, he saw Ellie standing in the doorway, wrapped in her shawl, watching him. "Everything all right?" she asked softly. "For now," he said. "Get some rest. We've got work tomorrow." She nodded, her face pale in the starlight. "Good night, Diesel." "Good night, Ellie." He waited until she closed the door before he went to the porch, sat in the rocking chair, and kept watch long after the lights went out inside. Somewhere far off, just at the edge of hearing, came the faint echo of motorcycles. Diesel's jaw tightened. "So, it begins," he murmured. And in the distance, the desert wind carried the sound of trouble rolling closer. The first sound was the smell. Burning hay carried on the wind. Ellie woke with a start, the faint orange glow flickering against her window. Her heart lurched. "Diesel!" she shouted, stumbling out of bed. By the time she reached the porch, Diesel was already halfway to the barn, shirtless and barefoot, his flashlight cutting through the dark. The flames licked high, snapping and roaring as smoke curled into the starless sky. The horses screamed inside. "Stay back!" Diesel shouted, his voice rough with urgency. But Ellie ran forward anyway, tears streaking her face. "We can't just let them die!" Diesel yanked the barn door open with a heave that tore the hinges loose. "Get the halters!" he barked. Ellie sprinted to the tack shed, coughing as smoke poured out. She grabbed the halters and threw them toward him, ignoring the heat that seared her skin. One by one, they freed the horses, blind, panicked animals pushing past them into the open field. Diesel coughed, his lungs filling with smoke, but he refused to stop. He ran back into the barn for one last horse, a bay mare trapped near a collapsed beam. "Diesel, no!" Ellie screamed. He ignored her. Using a length of wood as leverage, he lifted the fallen beam just enough for the mare to scramble free. But as she bolted out, part of the loft gave way, and Diesel hit the ground hard, dust and sparks raining over him. Ellie cried out and rushed toward him. "Diesel!" He staggered up, face blackened with soot, one arm pressed to his ribs. "I'm all right," he rasped, pushing her toward safety. When they reached the open field, Ellie turned back just in time to see the roof cave in completely. The barn they'd spent days mending was gone in a fiery crash. The sheriff's sirens wailed in the distance, the flashing lights finally breaking through the night. By sunrise, the flames had died, leaving only smoke and ashes. The smell of charred wood clung to everything. Ellie sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the wreckage. Diesel sat beside her, his arm in a makeshift sling. Neither spoke for a long time. Sheriff Caldwell walked up, her face grim. "I'm sorry, Ellie," she said quietly. "We'll find out who did this." Ellie's voice trembled. "We already know who." She looked toward Diesel. "Don't we?" Diesel nodded once, eyes hard. "Rex Murdoch. He's letting me know he's close." Caldwell frowned. "You're saying your old club leader's behind this?" "He's the only one who'd go this far." The sheriff sighed, glancing between them. "We'll run the investigation, but right now, all we've got is suspicion." When she walked away to speak with her deputies, Diesel stood and walked to the smoldering remains. He kicked at a half-burned beam, jaw tight. "I should have seen this coming," he muttered. Ellie rose and followed him. "This isn't your fault." "Yes, it is," he said. "They came for me. You just got caught in the fire." She stepped closer. "You think they burned my barn to get to you? Then they already failed. I'm still here." Diesel turned, eyes shining with something between guilt and awe. "You're not afraid?" "Of them?" she said softly. "Maybe, but not of you. Not of what you're trying to be." Diesel couldn't find words for that. He just looked away, swallowing hard. By noon, the sheriff's team had gone, leaving behind yellow tape and questions that no one could answer. Ellie brewed coffee while Diesel sat at the table, staring at his hands. "They'll be back," he said. "Then we'll be ready," she replied. He shook his head. "No, I can't stay here. It's not safe for you." "You're not going anywhere," Ellie said firmly. "You saved me. Twice now. You think I'm going to let you run off and get yourself killed?" "This ain't about me," he said. "You got something good here. Don't let me ruin it." Ellie's voice softened. "If you leave, they'll still come. And I'll be alone again. Is that what you want?" Diesel's jaw tightened. "What I want don't matter." Ellie stepped closer, her eyes fierce with quiet conviction. "It matters to me." Something in her voice broke through his wall of guilt. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You don't quit, do you?" "No," she said simply. "Not when it's something worth fighting for." That afternoon, a deputy came by to take statements. While Ellie gave her account, Diesel walked the perimeter, checking for tracks. Near the back fence, he spotted a broken piece of glass, part of a beer bottle, and a faint tire mark pressed into the dirt. He followed it until it vanished near the dry creek bed. Whoever had done this knew the land well enough to cover their trail. Diesel's stomach turned cold. When he came back, Ellie was sitting on the porch swing, eyes red but steady. "They said it was arson," she said quietly. "They found fuel residue near the east wall." Diesel nodded. "Yeah, they wanted to make sure it burned hot." Ellie glanced toward the open field where the horses grazed. "At least the animals made it." "Because of you," Diesel said. She looked at him, surprised. "You pulled that last one out." He shrugged. "Wouldn't have done it without your voice yelling my name." For a while, they just sat, watching the smoke drift away. As evening came, Ellie brought out a battered laptop from her study. "You ever use one of these?" Diesel raised an eyebrow. "Can't say I'm much of a computer man." She smiled faintly. "Good thing I am." She clicked open a folder. "I had a security camera installed a few months ago after the ranch break-ins. I thought it broke during the last storm, but maybe it caught something." Diesel leaned in, his pulse quickening. "Where's it hooked?" "Barn wall," she said. "If the fire didn't melt the card, we might have proof." Diesel stood, his voice steady. "Then we dig." By flashlight, they combed the wreckage that night. Diesel worked with one arm, the other pressed against his ribs, refusing to slow down. Ellie sifted through the ashes, coughing as soot rose around them. Finally, near a melted section of the outer wall, she found the camera, blackened but intact. "I got it," she called. Diesel took it gently from her hands. "If the card survived, we can show the sheriff who really did this." Ellie nodded, her face streaked with dirt but glowing with determination. "Then let's make sure they don't win." They walked back toward the house, the broken camera clutched between them, their silhouettes long and steady under the moonlight. Behind them, the barn still smoldered, but in their eyes, a new fire had already started, one that no gang could put out. The next morning, the ranch smelled of ash and loss. Smoke still curled from the ruins of the barn, thin and ghostly in the cold air. Ellie stood on the porch, clutching a thermos of coffee between both hands. Diesel was at the table inside, his injured arm in a proper sling now, working on the melted security camera with the careful patience of a man who had fixed 1,000 broken things before. "Any luck?" she asked softly as she stepped inside. He grunted. "Maybe. The casing's cooked, but the card might have survived." Ellie watched him pry the small black chip free, his fingers steady despite the burns. "If we can see what's on it, maybe Sheriff Caldwell will finally believe us." "Maybe," Diesel said, squinting at the tiny card. "If it ain't melted through." They drove into town together. Ellie's old pickup this time. Diesel carried the card in a small tin, like something sacred. The drive was quiet except for the hum of the tires and the occasional sigh from Ellie. The land rolled by in shades of pale yellow and red, endless and lonely. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Tommy Alvarez met them at the door. Young, friendly, with a face that hadn't yet seen much ugliness, He smiled at Ellie but froze a little when he saw Diesel. "Ma'am, sir?" he greeted, hesitating on the second word. Ellie gave him a small nod. "We think we've found something that might help." Diesel handed him the tin. "Security card from her barn. If you've got tech that can read it, we might see who lit the fire." Tommy raised an eyebrow. "Let's hope it's not toast." He led them into the back office where the sheriff waited. Caldwell looked up from her desk, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Mr. Dalton. Miss Monroe? What brings you in?" Diesel didn't waste words. "Proof." Tommy slid the card into a small reader attached to the computer. The screen flickered, lines of static, then a grainy black and white image appeared. Her barn, the night before. The timestamp confirmed it. 2 motorcycles pulled up to the side. 3 figures in leather jackets poured liquid along the wall. Caldwell leaned forward. "Pause that." Tommy froze the frame. Diesel's chest tightened when he saw the man leading the others. Even in the low light, he recognized the thick build, the posture, the patch on the back. Iron vultures. "That's him," Diesel said quietly. "Rex Murdoch." Caldwell studied the image, her jaw tightening. "I'll be damned." She turned toward Diesel. "You realize this makes you a target now more than ever." "I've been one for years," Diesel said. Ellie's voice trembled but held steady. "Now we can stop them, right? This is enough?" "Enough to start something," Caldwell said, "but not enough to end it. We'll need statements, warrants. It'll take time." Diesel's hand curled into a fist. "They ain't gonna wait." "Then don't go looking for them," Caldwell warned. "Let us handle it." Diesel met her gaze evenly. "If they come to her door again, I won't be calling you first." Caldwell sighed, rubbing her temples. "Mr. Dalton, don't make me regret trusting you." "I didn't ask for your trust," he said. Ellie placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Diesel." He exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his shoulders. "We'll let you know if we see anything." The ride home was quiet. Diesel's jaw worked the whole way, his thoughts miles ahead. Ellie finally broke the silence. "You can't fight them alone." "Not planning to," he said. "But I won't let them near you again." Ellie looked at him, her eyes soft but determined. "You can't protect me from everything. That's not what this is about." "What's it about then?" "It's about standing for something good, together." Diesel's grip on the wheel tightened, then loosened. He nodded once. "Then we stand." That afternoon, they began rebuilding what they could. Diesel refused to rest, hammering new posts, repairing the fence, clearing debris. Ellie brought him lemonade and sandwiches, her movements slower but purposeful. The land felt empty without the barn, but the horses grazed peacefully, as if refusing to remember the night before. When the sun dipped low, Ellie lit a small fire pit behind the house. They sat beside it on 2 old lawn chairs, the light flickering between them. The orange glow softened Diesel's face, making him look younger, almost at peace. "Reverend Burke stopped by earlier," Ellie said. "He said he's praying for us both." Diesel chuckled softly. "Reckon we'll need it?" "He also said something else," she added, her tone thoughtful. "He said when fire takes what we love, sometimes it's clearing the ground for something stronger to grow." Diesel poked at the embers with a stick. "Sounds nice. Doesn't make it hurt less." "No," Ellie agreed. "But maybe it helps us see why we're still standing." Diesel looked at her, eyes reflecting the flames. "You really believe there's a reason for all this?" "I do," she said simply, "even if I don't understand it yet." He studied her for a long time before speaking. "You remind me of my wife," he said softly. "She used to talk like that, Said God could make beauty out of wreckage. Ellie smiled faintly. She sounds like a smart woman. She was, Diesel said. Better than me in every way. Ellie's gaze lingered on him, gentle and sincere. You're better than you think. He didn't answer, but his throat worked as if the words lodged there had nowhere to go. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, Diesel walked out to the edge of the property. The moon hung low, pale and watchful. The desert stretched wide and silent, but his instincts prickled again. He crouched near the gate, brushing his fingers over the dirt. There, fresh tire tracks. He followed them a few feet until they disappeared into the brush. They hadn't come close enough to attack, not yet. But they were watching. He straightened slowly, staring into the distance. If you're out there, Rex, he muttered, I'm ready. Then he turned back toward the house where light still glowed faintly through Ellie's window. Inside, she dreamed of her son's laughter and the soft sound of hooves on dry earth. Outside, Diesel stood guard again, one man against the dark, carrying the weight of two souls and the fragile hope of one broken sanctuary. And as the night deepened, both prayed in silence for dawn to come quickly and for the courage to meet whatever followed it. The morning came cool and gray, the desert quiet after a long, restless night. Diesel sat on the porch steps, his coffee untouched, watching mist rise over the fields. Ellie joined him, her shawl tight around her shoulders. They'll come soon, won't they? She asked softly. He nodded. Yeah, I can feel it. Ellie placed a hand over his. Then we'll face it together. Before he could reply, a distant rumble echoed through the stillness. Motorcycles, more than one. Dust rose along the ridge. Diesel stood, his jaw set. It's them, he turned to Ellie. Go inside and lock the door. I'm not hiding, she said firmly. Diesel looked at her. This woman who had survived fire, loss, and fear, and something fierce stirred in him. You're braver than any person I've known. And you're not the monster they think you are, she said. The sound grew louder. Diesel reached for his gun, heart steady. No more running, Ellie whispered. God's with us. He nodded once. Then let him see what grace looks like. As the first bikes came into view, the wind shifted, carrying both dust and destiny. The battle for peace and redemption had finally arrived. The engines thundered closer, shaking the quiet desert. Diesel stood on the porch, gun steady, Ellie right behind him. 3 bikers stopped at the gate, their leader pulling off his helmet. Rex Murdoch, sneering like the devil himself. Well, well, Rex called. Didn't think you'd hide behind a preacher's pet. Diesel didn't flinch. You burned her barn. You want me? I'm right here. Rex laughed. You think walking away makes you clean? It makes me free, Diesel said. Rex raised his hand, the glint of a gun catching sunlight. Before he could fire, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Ellie's voice cut through the tension. You're not free, Rex. You're just lost. Rex cursed, backing toward his bike. This ain't over. Diesel's eyes stayed locked on his. It is for me. The sheriff's cruiser appeared on the ridge, lights flashing red and blue. Rex kicked his engine to life and sped off, his men following in a blur of dust. When silence returned, Ellie's hand found Diesel's. You did it, she whispered. He shook his head, voice rough. No, we did. And for the first time in years, Diesel believed in peace. Morning light spilled over the quiet ranch. Diesel sat on the porch, mending a broken rail when Sheriff Caldwell's cruiser pulled in. She stepped out, smiling. We got him. Rex Murdoch's in custody. Your video did it. Ellie let out a trembling breath. It's finally over. Caldwell nodded and drove off, leaving silence and sunlight behind. Ellie turned to Diesel. You're free now. He gazed at the horizon. Didn't think I'd ever be. She smiled softly. Grace has a way of finding us. Diesel nodded. Guess it found me here. And peace finally settled in. The sunset bathed the rebuilt ranch in gold. Grace Acres stood tall again, a symbol of hope and healing. Ellie walked beside Diesel through the fresh grass, the smell of new wood and hay surrounding them. Neighbors gathered to celebrate, laughter mixing with soft music and the sound of horses grazing. Reverend Burke lifted his hands in prayer. Out of ashes came grace, he said, and from pain came peace. Diesel stepped forward, voice rough but steady. I was lost once, but a woman tied to a tree showed me what grace really looks like. The crowd applauded. Ellie's eyes glistened as she took his hand. As the lanterns flickered to life, Diesel whispered, You gave me back my soul. Ellie smiled through her tears. No, Diesel, God did. We just built the place for him to find us. Together they watched the stars rise over Grace Acres. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.